After the fiasco last week with tons of rumors circulating that we could not use mockups from Etsy, we have finally somewhat heard from Etsy. Their credit here is not mine, and the ones who got the answer are Scott Volkler and Chris from the YouTube channel Brand Creators and their podcast Rock Your Brand. In their podcast, they discussed the email they got back from Etsy Legal after they sent Etsy Legal a message last week and followed up a whole bunch of times to ensure that we actually heard back and had an answer. But because of their podcast and video was an hour and a half, I wanted to create a quick summary. But if you want to watch the whole video, I'm going to link it below. And again, I'm not taking any credit for this. Thank you to these guys for being so persistent and getting us an answer back. To first recap what happened, last week there was an influx of listings being taken down for not being handmade. And major rumors started circulating that we were not allowed to use mockups, and this was the reason that our listings were being taken down. It was this clause here that caused a lot of skepticism as to if we could use mockups, because under the Etsy Seller Handbook, they did say that the listing photo should be of the finished product or an image supplied by the production partner that accurately depicts the item the buyer will be receiving. Sellers are responsible for ensuring that these images properly represent their finished items. And the wording had people very confused. Were we only allowed to take photos ourselves or use those really bad mockups that we get from Printify or Printful? So Scott and Chris sent a message over to the Etsy Legal asking if this interpretation of this clause was correct, and here was Etsy's answer. And I've typed this out to make it easier for people to read because, again, this was done in their podcast, but this is what they had stated the response from Etsy was. Regarding the use of mockups from other sources, such as the ones purchased from Etsy, your understanding aligns with our seller policy. Sellers are allowed to use mockups from other sources under certain conditions. These conditions include owning the rights to use the mockup and ensuring that the mockup accurately represents the actual product being sold. Based on what we've received so far, it appears that sellers may have encountered issues when using photos or mockups of similar products instead of the exact product they're selling. It's important to note that an official mockup from a production partner like Printify is not the only option sellers can work with. Production partners can utilize their own original designs as long as they disclose any partnerships inside of their shop. So while some people have had mockups in their store and it was taken down and Etsy refused to reinstate them, Etsy does state this is because they might not have been using the exact product they were selling. If you've been on Etsy for a while, you have probably seen many people using Comfort Colors mockups, but they're selling a different brand of t-shirt, misrepresenting the actual product that's being sold. There can also be an issue sometimes when using things like Placeit. I have used Placeit photos before and then realized that the photo actually does not match what I'm selling at all. They don't have branded products on there. So for t-shirts and sweatshirts, theirs might fit differently than the actual product you are selling. Placeit is amazing for mugs, tote bags, anything that isn't like fit. But I have seen mockups on Placeit that are actually like a sport material and have like a sporty side line that people have used, but they're selling Bella Canvas. So that's not the actual product that the person is going to be receiving. You also need to make sure that your mockups are bought legally. So you are not screenshotting someone's mockup, you're not stealing it from someone else, you're not just erasing their design on top of it, but you are actually purchasing it from the person who created that mockup so that you have the rights to use it in your store. AI mockups are also allowed, but I do want to state that a lot of AI mockups that I've seen do not look like the products that people are actually going to receive. I've seen a lot of ones on Etsy that have been popping up, but I have many different Gildans, and they do not fit like that, and it can become deceiving when people are relying only on AI mockups for their photos. So when you are looking to use mockups, search by the actual brand that you are planning to sell. If you are selling Gildan 18,000 sweatshirts, look that up. If you are selling Bella Canvas, find Bella Canvas mockups and don't use a generic shirt or a Gildan shirt or the Comfort Color shirt just because that mockup is prettier. Okay, so we now have confirmation that we're allowed to use accurate mockups, but why are so many listings still being flagged? In my theory, which I discussed in depth in my last video, where I talked about this whole fiasco and how I'm going to protect my store should a listing or my shop ever be taken down. But that theory summarized is that bots are currently on the hunt for dropshippers. To find dropshippers, Etsy bots are searching across the internet for multiple instances of the same photo. And unfortunately, very popular mockups are not just used on Etsy, they're also used on other sites, which could be triggering a flag from the Etsy bots. And incorrect bot flags are not brand new to Etsy. In fact, they've been happening for a long time for many different reasons. But to protect yourselves, make sure you are using accurate photos. Make sure you are disclosing your production partners. And if you don't know how to do that, I also discussed this in my last video as well. So if your Etsy listing is taken down, make sure you go and double check all your photos, all of your settings, and then submit an appeal to get it back if you believe that your listing has been incorrectly flagged. And still, there are some things I have done just to protect my store should the worst case happen and I do lose my store. This has been collecting emails legally through Aweber. It's been downloading my shop data. And again, in my last video, I covered all of this in depth. So even though this discussed this issue before we had an answer, I do recommend giving it a listen if you do ever want to protect your shop and make sure that it is set up correctly. And thank you again, Chris and Scott, for getting this answer for us. Everybody, please go on over to their YouTube video and leave a comment and thank them because they have done a huge favor for the print on demand community.